Hello and welcome to Face the Citizens. I am your host, Iguma Gabriel. This is a forum that gets leaders and citizens in the same room to have a conversation on a national issue. Today, we talk about the idea of a national dialogue. Plans are underway to have a national dialogue where Ugandans will come together and talk about national wounds. To discuss the national dialogue, I have Justice James Ogola. He is from the Elders Forum. Welcome to Face the Citizens.
Thank you.
We also have the State Minister for Internal Affairs, the Honorable Obiga Kanya. Welcome to Face the Citizens.
Thank you, Mr. Guma, and the audience.
From Parliament, two MPs. I will introduce first the MP of Lira Municipality. He's also the president of the Uganda People's Congress, the Honorable Jimmy Akena. Welcome to Face the Citizens.
Thank you very much.
And finally, the only lady on the panel, the National Female Youth MP, the Honorable Anna Deke. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Gabriel.
Let me start with the Honorable Ogola. Honorable Ogola, the Elders Forum has been at the center of talking about a national dialogue. Many people do not know where we are in that conversation. And if you could just let us know why a national dialogue and how far with the process.
Thank you, Gabriel. Thank you, citizens, for being here. You asked about dialogue, right?
Yes, please.
So what has this to do with the dialogue? We'll get into this later. But in a nutshell, Uganda has been around, if you will, since 1962, 55 years on. We started quite well in 62. You were not here, most of you. I was. We went into a diversion, and we've seen violence and coups and wars and rebellions, name them. We've never been stable for 55 good years. And we, the elders, ask as we must, why? What can we do about it? We've tried all solutions, electoral, constitutional, and others. We don't seem to be succeeding too well. So we, the elders, say, why don't we sit as a nation and ask why? Sit at a table and go to what the scripture says, come, let us reason together. Perchance to get to the real solutions, perchance to begin to heal this nation.
All right. The Honorable Ogola says, the elders say, come, let us reason together. 78% of this country is made up of young people. You represent them, Honorable Adeke. What are the thoughts of the young people on this matter?
Well, thank you very much, Gabriel. I want to really recognize my Lord, Justice Ogola, because he's very respectable, and his leadership of the Elders Forum has cast a lot of light into this path of the dark future that we used to see for Uganda. Young people across the country, as you may know, constitute the vast majority of our demography. About even 80% of our population are young people, because Uganda has the youngest population in the world, one of the youngest in the world. The young people have not been actively involved in decision making. We are emerging from a system that has disempowered young people in making decisions. Even the education and skills that they have been able to receive, at least in the last 20 or so years, has not equipped them well enough for world standards. So the young people are really struggling. I think that we can benefit from a national dialogue because that is an avenue for us to foster our agenda as young people. We feel that the leadership of the country has been making decisions for young people without young people. And we believe that if this national dialogue is going to deliver the best for young people, then it should also be, then the people at the table, the composition of the people at the table should be representative of our population distribution.
Okay.
So that we can hear the voices of young people, the discontent, what we feel about the injustices that we feel have been perpetrated against us, about how ill-equipped we are compared to our colleagues world over, so that we can draw a plan and say, this is where we want to go as young people. Because this country really does belong to also young people, mostly. If in maybe the next 10 years, you're going to even have a younger population than we already have. So what happens if the people making decisions are blinded towards our needs as a population, what we want, what is important to us? Then that I think is the most important thing for us as young people. And young people have said this. They have engaged. I know that Justice Ogola, through his leadership, has been able to meet young people. There was a meeting organized in Soroti where young people were speaking out and saying, you know, we can't be called to the table when we are not at an equal standing. There is no equality. We are impoverished. People are going to pay us off to sell out our ideas. Right. We are broke. We don't have money. We don't have jobs. Our most primal instinct is survival. It's survival. So politicians come and they dominate the space and they draw agenda for us that doesn't really apply to us. Right. But they're able to take our voices because they have the money.
Politicians come and they dominate the stage. Honorable Jimmy Akena, you are a politician. You actually head one of the political parties in the country, Uganda People's Congress. You are from the opposition. What are your thoughts around this issue of dialogue and coming to the table to talk about this country, Uganda?
Thank you very much, Gabriel. As Uganda People's Congress, we have approached the aspect of dialogue with openness. It is important that we have a conversation as to where we want to go. A lot of the difficulties in the politics of Uganda has involved questions of leadership. And what we've been trying to do is, can we have an honest conversation on how we're going to deal with the transition? You see, in politics, we can find so many reasons of why we should not interact, why we should not talk, or hold certain grudges of maybe some of the political past, which we may not even be party to. Very many times I hear conversations about the 1966 crisis in Uganda. That was before my birth. It cannot be something which guides or causes me not to interact with my fellow Ugandans. So we must have an honest conversation as to how we're going to move this country forward, and thereby provide the opportunities and the tools for future generations to enjoy the benefits of this country of ours.
Right.
So the whole purpose of dialogue is critical. If we avoid the dialogue, we are not going to avoid the transition, because some of these transitions are governed by forces beyond our control. There's aspects of biology. There are certain things which will happen. Change will happen. What we're calling for is, let's have a managed transition.
Honorable Obiga Kanya, the elders, the young people, the opposition say we need to have a dialogue. You are part of the current government, the NRM government that has been here from 1986. Are you for a dialogue, or do you fear that a dialogue will discuss you out of power?
Thank you, Gabriel. First of all, of course, this government cannot be against the government. I mean, dialogue, obviously. Whether of elders, whether of the youth, whether of the parties, I think it is a government that has tried always to leave that open avenue for people to proceed on dialogue. So as a government, we are fully for government dialogue. And the dialogue is healthy for a government, not only the NRM. It's healthy for a government because then you know what the other side needs and what the whole country knows. But at my personal level, let me make my brief comments on beginning with what Justice Ogola said about elders are not born. Elders are made. Today's elders will not be there. Today's youth will be the elders tomorrow. The bigger question which can carry these elders across the country together and in unity for the whole country is, what is the common good? What is that which can carry all of us together from one generation to the other? That's what Uganda needs to define. Without that, we would then be talking about individual interests. And this is healthy for all of us. Therefore, one of the big things I see for the Elders Forum now, even before we go into the details discussions, is really to impact in its, in the factual sense as it happened, the history of this country. What are those things which happened in the past, which have carried, which have caused differences, and which have tended to cause disunity? And how can we bridge these gaps so that in spite of these differences, in spite of them, we're able to see the commonality of Ugandans? And it is that commonality which I believe will carry a focused discussion of elders forward.
All right.
Thank you very much.
We need to go for a break, but just before we go for a break, if all of us on the panel from different, spheres agree that we should have dialogue, Justice Ogola, how come we haven't yet had a dialogue? Because the calls for dialogue have not just started.
Thank you, Gabriel. The calls for dialogue have been here a long time. My organization and IRC and so on have been at this almost 10 years now. You're absolutely spot on. Why are we still talking about talks? That's the nature of dialogue. Everybody agrees that we can sit together and chat. The devil is in the detail. The detail is what we talk about. Honorable Jimmy already said it must include some kind of transition. And I think, Gabriel, you caught on that one quickly. You asked Honorable, can we talk about moving other people out? Is that what the dialogue is about? Now, details the problem. What we're experiencing today in this nation, for the last couple of years or so, the violence in parliament, the indignity and all of that, changing constitutions and so on. When there are figures like 70, is it 70, 71, 75, want to change it to something else. All those are important, and they're very, very fundamental for you, the younger generation. But for this nation, which is going to be here for hundreds of years, those things are nothing. They pale in significance. What is important is that this nation grow out of the last 50 years. We do not want Uganda to repeat what it had in the first 50 years.
All right.
And therefore, we need a fundamental, comprehensive discussion and conversation so that we can get a bigger picture.
All right. Let's go for a break. When we come back from the break, we will look at those details that we should talk about in relation to dialogue. Let's take a break right now. The conversation continues after the break. Welcome back from the break. Thank you very much for keeping it here on Face the Citizens, a forum where the leaders speak to the citizens. And in this segment, the leaders will get to answer some questions from the citizens. We're talking about national dialogue. And in the first segment, we all agreed that a national dialogue is key for the country. Justice Ogola left it at, but what do we talk about? Honorable Akena, in the first segment, you did talk about some of the things that are key in a national dialogue. If very quickly, from your perspective, what should we come to the table to talk about?
Now, from my perspective, it may not be the most helpful to set very high bars which can hinder the process of dialogue. I am prepared even just to sit down and have a cup of tea. Across the political divide, it's important that we have meeting points where the conversation can begin. You're not going to sit down on the first instant and discuss the most intricate and difficult problems. Although there are some issues which need to be sorted out, but even when you try to sort out problems of a historical nature, you will find many people have different perspectives over the same history. In some cases, a victory, which I may call a victory on my side, can be the defeat for somebody else. And therefore, it may not augur well in having the key elements of dialogue. The important thing is we need to have a culture of where we're willing to engage. In whatever difficulties we face, in whatever hurdles are going to be there, we must have that willingness to have that conversation.
All right. But one of the things that has come out clearly is the opposition, for example, has set parameters, has set conditions for dialogue to take place. Does this even help with the whole proposal for a national dialogue?
I think those are some of the issues which might have delayed the process of getting the dialogue moving. If you set certain conditions, like the question you asked the Honorable Minister, is this dialogue to talk some people out of government? Definitely that will not, the conversation will not start. But if it's a question of, can we come to terms with our history? Can we put things in context of our future is greater than everything we have gone through? And that it's important that we harness all the energies towards that future. That is a conversation which is possible.
All right.
So it is how you bring it about and the willingness to have that conversation. And therefore, from my perspective, even if it is to have a cup of tea, it's a good starting point.
All right. Honorable Minister,
Yes.
Are there particular things that the NRM would want to see in a national dialogue?
Essentially, no. Generally, obviously, no. I think there are about 3 areas which the NRM as a government would really want us to avoid if we were to move progressively towards a positive national dialogue.
So for you, it's not the things to talk about, it's the things not to talk about?
No. There are things which, if you want to move forward, it's a matter of principle, you should not dwell on. Number 1, accusations and counter-accusations. Those are negative. They will always take you back because there is nobody who is perfect. Even the present government is not perfect. And the past governments are not perfect. So if we go in a national dialogue to accuse who is who did what, and so forth, obviously we will not move forward. Secondly, we should not really concentrate so much on the negative aspect of what our country has gone through. All countries all over the world, they have made mistakes in nation building, all of them. Whether we talk of America, whether we talk of what, they've always gone. So a national dialogue, in other words, people who come to the national dialogue table must come with a very open mind. Must come with an open mind to say, yes, mistakes were made. How can we use mistakes now and those in the past to make something, to build a better future? Remember I said at the beginning, and I was quoting Justice Ogola, I said, today's elders will not be there. These elders, I mean the ones who are young today, will be the elders. These cannot purely be making advancement on the basis of what is negative, quoting what is negative culturally, negative what is historically, politically, and so forth. So, as far as I'm concerned, and as far as the NRM government is concerned, that's why we're going with a very open mind. And we've said this national dialogue, but led particularly by the elders, is extremely important because the elders are an embodiment of this past history,
All right.
they can embark on us to move forward.
All right. Let's take a quick survey here to find out from the people seated in the audience, what do you think should be discussed at the national dialogue, the proposed national dialogue? Yes, sir. Your name, question, or comment?
My name is Rukundo Enoch, and for me, my main concern is security. There is so much being invested in surveillance and less in intelligence.
So you think the dialogue should center on security?
It should be part of that, because if someone big in the government is killed, then you register now borders. Then someone else is killed, then you register sport bikes. So next time if they use a taxi, then you register all the taxis. Then you introduce cameras. But if you invest more on intelligence, you will know that there's going to be an attack.
All right. Thank you for your comment. I wonder what will happen if the people came walking and will they register everyone's legs? Let's take a...
I'm Chakunze Laura Angel.
Yes,
from
Angel.
the Youth Friendly Service Center, Katwe. My main point here is how many elders are willing to listen out to the young people. Very few elders have that initiative to accept to listen to these young people. And they normally undermine us young people saying, we are young, what do we have that is constructive?
All right.
So this is one of the biggest challenges we have.
All right.
Yes, thank you very much. This is Emma Chero.
Yes, Emma.
From Karamoja. Before we go for a national dialogue, at least let's look at what has failed us for all this time. I know we have done best somehow we have failed. I'm looking at peaceful transitions of power.
All right.
That's what has failed us so much. So what sets in is sectarian interest, selfish interest, and so forth, which have taken center stage all other priorities in the country.
All right.
So there will be no money to buy drugs. There will be no money to pay teachers. There will be no money to pay health workers. But there is money to just look for how to guide members of parliament, how to amend this.
Well, Emma, thank you. Emma, thank you.
If we
We've
say
got your
we
point.
take what is a priority, I'm sure as a country, we shall forge out.
All right.
Thank you
Emma,
very
thank you very much. We've got your point. We're going to take another round of questions, but let's first get a few answers. And Honorable Adeka, I'd like to start with you. Somebody did suggest that the conversation should not be led by the elders, but by the young people, since they're the majority. What's your view on that?
Well, I want to lend credence to her comment because that's generally our worry as young people, that an agenda is going to be drawn without us. And really, it should be nothing for us without us. Everything should be done with us if it's for us.
And
but
so
also,
the young people can be participants.
Yes, they can. But you see, just participating maybe puts us, okay, just observing the process puts us at a disadvantage. What I would like to, I differ a little bit from what she says. Yes, it's true that we must be there, but also we recognize that the country is 50 years old. Most of us here are below 30, yes. There's a wealth of experience which the Elders Forum may have that we don't, but we also have ideas about where we want to take Uganda.
Okay.
So the participation should be meaningful to the extent that we are not just going to be representatives on the table, but we are going to be stakeholders on the table.
Justice Ogola, there were two questions that were directed at you.
Someone who said, the elders are not listening to the young people. If that's true, it's terrible. Life is a really. We who are now elders today are running with that baton. And as Honorable Biga Kanya said, repeated twice, very soon we'll be handing you that baton. And you'll be the elders of this country. We have to listen to you, we have to train you to become elders. I keep telling people, my age, we are at the airport, the departure lounge. You, ladies and gentlemen, are at the arrivals lounge.
Honorable Kania, I actually believe part of this question about the elders not listening was directed to
Yeah,
people in
definitely.
government. But let's go for a break. When we come back from the break, we will pick up with you responding to that question.
Fine, thank you.
Welcome back from the break. Thank you for keeping it here on Face the Citizens. I'm your host, Iguma Gabriel. We're discussing the proposed national dialogue with our guests, the Honorable Jimmy Akena, the Honorable Ann Adeke, Justice James Ogola, and the Honorable Obiga Kania. Before we went for the break, a question had been asked around elders not listening. And I asked Honorable Kania to respond to that, because the elders being talked about right now could be the ones in government.
Yes, I think Emma asked that question. He raised that issue, and definitely, as part of the process of starting this dialogue, I amend my statement to say that yes, I think our youth, our young people need a constructive stakeholder involvement in the issues of this. Definitely. I do not mean it's an absolute that they should not be anywhere. Maybe I didn't make it clear. But the other comment I wanted to make is a simple one. I'm using this not because I want to recite what happened in Parliament. I think that one has been well answered by Justice Ogola, the issue of what happened in Parliament. In my view, whatever happened in Parliament or whatever happened somewhere, it clearly demands of us as Ugandans that wherever we act at a particular point, as a country, we must have certain minimum standards that we set for ourselves, irrespective of the outcome of what comes there.
Honorable Kania,
Yes.
32 years ago,
Yes.
the NRM government came and promised a fundamental change. If by now there is no minimum standard on how we should behave as Ugandans, doesn't this just spell doom for the NRM and mean the NRM government has failed?
I am not saying there are no standards. I'm merely underscoring the fact, as Justice Ogola said, that, for example, in Parliament, by now, after 32 years, with the Constitution, in spite of the weaknesses which may be in that Constitution, in spite, we must be able to follow what should happen in Parliament. With the judicial process, in spite of the weaknesses in that, we must be able to follow that until we reform them through this dialogue. In other words, I'm saying there are minimum standards, even if they are imperfect. For the time being, they must be our guiding principles, and they must be our patriotic frame that we must follow.
All right.
Thank you.
When we went for a break, we were joined by the Honorable Mukitale Birahwa. He is from Bulisa County. Honorable Mukitale, you've been very vocal about national dialogue, and now you actually have tabled before Parliament a bill on regional tire. Very quickly, your views on national dialogue and what form should this dialogue take?
I've just come all the way from Bulisa because I value any voice of consensus building for national dialogue. And I'm looking at national dialogue extra politician, beyond those who are looking for political offices, beyond those who just want some business in government, but in the areas of economy, between those who are wealthy and those who have nothing to eat. That extreme disparity between those who have the arms and those who do not have access to them. How do they live together? I came in when you're talking about the generation which is currently here with the numbers, as opposed to the minority which is in charge of them. But also beyond the current generation, the cross generation, because in public trust, it's not only about us who are living, there are those who are unborn who also own this country. So we need to look into the cultural issues. The reason why I moved the most on urging government to implement a consensus in the 2005 Constitution Amendment was the challenge of equity, regional balance, the question of regional governments, that by Constitution, we are supposed to have a national character and the whole country are growing at the same pace, but we seem to have a problem. And that's why I was saying, if it was agreed and resolved in the Constitution in 2005, Article 178, why after 13 years that has not been implemented? So national dialogue is a win-win. Mm-hmm. There is no loser, there is no bloodshed, and aware of our history, where we have spent a lot, we have squandered a lot of resources, Ugandans fighting against Ugandans, we really need to have a new beginning whereby we can dialogue. Yes, I agree. I have heard those who have said that power is not negotiated. I heard that a few days ago. But I would like to contend that for the interest...
Just before you move from that, is the NRM saying power is not negotiated?
Why? I can't tell where it comes from.
All right.
I have heard from the president that we can dialogue about peace, but we cannot negotiate about how to come to power. And I think that's why we are saying it's not about only the ruling, also the ruled have a voice to say.
Okay. Honorable Birahwa, just very quickly, we have a constitution, and the constitution actually gives a timetable on how we transition leaders and what have you. How come this is not a good solution?
There is what we call...
And every 5 years, you go back to the people of Bulisa, and they send you back to parliament. Are you saying this is a bad way of doing things?
We see we want to be in power but also relevant. You can be in power but not being relevant. You can also legally be in place but when you are not legitimate. So we are trying to balance. We are looking for a win-win situation.
All right.
And not just about numbers, because you may be having numbers taking decisions, but the numbers reasonable. We also need to be reasonable.
All right, Honorable, just hold it there. Honorable Akena, what role should Parliament play in all of this?
I have been in Parliament. We joined together with my brother, Honorable Mukitale. We came in there, we were in our 30s, young and full of energy. We have gained some experience, we have gained some knowledge, and we are pushing on this issue of the importance of dialogue. And one thing I want to speak to the young people is that don't write off completely those who are older or elders. There is a lot to be gained from the wisdom which can be provided so long as it does not suffocate the energy and the vitality of the youth.
All right. All right. Okay. If we could just take more questions very quickly, and this time you can direct your question to a panelist. If you could put your hand up, the microphone will come to you.
I'm Drusilla Grace, a student, IUEA. My question goes to the leader. Have you...
Of the Elders Forum?
Yeah, from the Elders Forum. Have you tried to set up maybe a different constitution of political, non-political, religious and non-religious leaders that can actually come up as a team and look to the positive energy of the young people, let's say maybe the education, looking forward to how to work on the poor massive rise in education? Yes, you are building schools, but what is the knowledge that you are giving us?
All right.
Instead of indulging yourselves, attacking one side, yet you are also responsible for the growth and the failure of this country.
All right, thank you, Grace.
My name is George Ebonyu.
Yes, George.
I'm from Sorority. Yeah, now, the issue, what I wanted to know is, to what extent are the issues discussed at the dialogue really taken in? Yeah? We could... because, okay, here people are allowed to speak out their mind, to speak out their issues, what challenges they are having, or what ideas they have in order to make a better future or a better tomorrow. But to what extent are the things discussed in the dialogue taken in? Or is the dialogue just there to show that the public is actually put into consideration, like to show that the public also has something to say in the government, yet there is actually nothing?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, George. I have a lady in the front.
Once again, I'm Angel, and my question goes to the Honorable Minister. How many times has the ruling government really revisited its manifestos and given clear and effective accountability to us, the young people?
Thank you, Mr. Gabriel. My name is Hon.Ann, a student at Chambago University. My question goes directly to the youth MP. I would like to ask you, yes, the State Minister for Internal Affairs just said that the youth actually need a well-structured representative on the table. So as MP, what have you done to show that, to make sure that at least we come up with a well-structured representation?
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Honorable Adeke, let's start with that one very quickly.
Thank you very much, Gabriel. About what I have done to come up with a structured representation, I've personally been involved, and just as we were on the sidelines, I was reminding Justice Ogola about some of the meetings that we have organized. For example, Eastern Uganda, in Soroti district particularly, early this year, there was a dialogue that had about 300 youth from within the district who were convened. So that's just one of the things I have done. But I also recognize, I recognize that because of the way young people are widespread, it would be important as one of the strategies that actually every district gets to speak out about their views on the issues that the national dialogue will factor.
Right.
Because it's impossible for us to sit here in Kampala and say we are drawing an agenda for young people in Uganda. We need to hear what young people in Abim are saying. We need to hear what young people in Chisoro are saying.
Right.
So it is very important, and this is something that I hope the Elders Forum can work with me on, that we actually zero it to the most primal level, which is district at least.
All right, thank you, Honorable. Honorable Akena, the opposition, what can you do to ensure that the opposition is willing to come to the table? Because so far, it seems like it is the ruling party and the opposition that have put conditions to have this dialogue, and yet this is just a dialogue. Why put conditions?
The opposition is diverse, and you get differing opinions across the spectrum or across the opposition. At this moment, we are trying to use the avenues through the IPOD, Inter-Party Organization for Dialogue, which involves political parties in parliament. And the fact that the president has shown some indication that some dialogue can take place under the auspices of IPOD, we are going to pursue it as much as possible.
Okay.
It is key that some of the issues which are coming up, that I really like what I think it's Rose who mentioned. It is important that the young people are provided with the right knowledge and skills to make them effective in this environment. And the environment which we're going into today, it is a very globalized. These young people of today are going to be competing directly with a young person from China for the same jobs, for the same opportunities. Now, if we do not empower our young people with the necessary knowledge, skills, and opportunities in this Uganda of ours, we're actually going to be disenfranchising them on their future.
All right.
So a lot of this conversation cannot wait, cannot hold up. It needs to be done quite quickly such that we get everything moving and everybody's on board towards the issue of dialogue.
Thank you, Honorable Akena. Honorable Minister, there was a direct question to you.
Yes, there was a direct question, but just before I comment on that, let me say something very small about what my brother, Honorable Mukitale, said about the issue of the issue of numbers and the issue of negotiating power. I think we have a framework, one of our best frameworks along which dialogue in this country can be taking place is the issue of the Constitution, which provides very good frameworks for whenever we want to make change, whether we consult the people every 10 years, whether we do a review, whether Parliament does what. I think that is the best framework. And when the President said there would be no need to negotiate for power, I think he was referring to that reference of the Constitution, that yes, we have a framework. If you want to negotiate power, then let's do so within the framework of the Constitution.
All right.
Secondly, the issue of numbers, unfortunately, is the best in the democratic world. There's no other way. It is the best of the worst. Otherwise, what else would we use? Now, finally, the issue which I referred to me was about the issue of NRM reviewing its manifesto generally. Now, if you notice, the manifesto that NRM puts out every 5 years before it goes to the elections, you will find that there is significant change. There are certain elements which are dropped out because it is found they were impractical to implement. Others are improved, but others are dropped because they've already been implemented. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister.
Yeah.
Justice Ogola.
Thank you, Gabriel. Thank you, citizens. There was a question about who is responsible for the condition in which this nation is today in terms of generations. I take the blame. My generation is what has brought Uganda from 1962 to today. Having taken the blame, you have the responsibility to fix it. Let us work together. Majority, yes. Minority, yes. But it was said, some wise person said of a piano, it has black keys, it has white keys. You can play some music using only the white keys. You can also play some music using only the black keys. But for harmony, you need both black and white. We need the elders, we need the youth. There was a query, and we haven't quite touched it. What should this dialogue be talking about? It's very fundamental. Honorable Kena says, yes, he's content even to come and have a cup of tea, and that's wonderful. We should actually be having more tea among ourselves as a nation. Or a glass of wine if you are to my left. But we have had those kinds of discussions in this nation. Lancaster House is where we made the first constitution of independent Uganda. Lancaster House is in London. We left issues unresolved. The lost counties and I don't know whatever. Those were left unresolved by the colonial administrations. The next big one was in Moshi. After Idi Amin and all that trouble, we all came together as a nation and sat in Moshi, away from Uganda. Lancaster is away from Uganda. Moshi is away from Uganda. The third one was in Nairobi, again away from Uganda. The only big one that we've had here on mother soil has been the CA and the constitutional making process of 1995. But that was narrow. It was about the constitution. What we are talking about now, this new dialogue, is a big thing. We happen to be an island in a sea of these Great Lakes countries, the Horn of Africa. We have no access to the sea directly. We depend on our neighbors. So integration must be a key item on this agenda. Having said all of those, it's not for us, you and us here, to fix the agenda of the dialogue. That will be for those who will sit at the table. That will be their primary item.
Okay.
What is it we are coming to talk about? But it better be around these issues to find consensus about them.
Justice James Ogola from the Elders Forum, the Honorable Obiga Kanya, State Minister for Internal Affairs.
Thank you.
The Honorable Jimmy Akena, President of the Uganda People's Congress, and the Honorable Anna Deke, National Female Youth MP. Thank you very much for being on Face the Citizens tonight. Citizens that have been part of the guests on the show today, the Honorable Mukitale, thank you for being a part of the show. But you watching us by television, thank you for being a part of Face the Citizens. From me, Guma Gabriel, and our panelists, it's a good night. God bless you.